Welcome to the Scoop World Order. I got Greene and I've got Nevadabuck. We are talking NFL draft rumors, insights, and inside information that we have from all of our sources, and we have a lot of them. We broke some very interesting stuff. Nevada, I'm going to start with you. Tell me a little bit about the nugget that you broke today that has become national news in the last 8 hours.
Yeah, there was frankly, it was something that I had never heard before, but there was a buzz that started to build in the agent circles and then amongst a number of NFL teams. And it was basically that Justin Fields had disclosed that he had a mild case of epilepsy and that there was a concern about epileptic seizures or events or whatever you want to call them, happening in the future, and that this was potentially moving him down some teams' draft boards. And, ironically, we broke the story about this kind of coming out, and then Ian Rappaport came in a couple hours later and confirmed that this was actually true. And it was kind of news to me, and it was just interesting me as closely as we cover the Buckeyes. I had never heard this. I had never heard this story before. I had never heard this from anybody inside the program. And I'd never even read anything that even hinted at something like this. So it was a pretty closely held secret, and was definitely an interesting day for Justin. I think it's a big deal. No, I think it's kind of an excuse or a reason for some teams to either move him up or down the board. But it was interesting nonetheless, and it's certainly been an interesting 12 hours for sure.
Bank, with all your NFL sources, have you ever heard anything like this before on Justin?
No, and something that I heard, a couple of days ago now kind of makes sense. Former Browns and I think Patriots GM Michael Lombardi made a statement, I think it was over the weekend, where he guaranteed that the Niners would not take Justin Fields at 3. And he didn't say who they were taking. He said it could be Mac Jones, could be Trey Lance. He said, I promise you they are not taking Justin Fields. And just the way he said it was weird. It didn't make sense to me that he would be that bold and not have a clue who they would take. So it kind of laid it out there that something was wrong, and I don't know. I just thought the guy was a nut, but he must have had this report. I'm guessing. I don't know. Because Mike Lombardi, he was very bold. Wouldn't say why he felt that way. And it just created something to me because I got a wager right now on Fields going 3 to the Niners. And I think Nevada does too. So obviously I was listening when he said that, but never dreamed it would end up being this. Like I said, I had a talk last week with, an NFL scout for an NFL team. Guy been doing it for many years. He certainly never said anything to me about it. And he could have said something, off the record. Don't repeat this, but he didn't say a word about that. In fact, he told me that he thinks the Niners are going to take Mac Jones because it fits what Shanahan wants to do and John Lynch, but he felt his team would never take Mac Jones over Justin Fields. So I thought all that was interesting, but the first I heard about this is when Nevada put it out today.
You still feel like they're going to take Justin Fields at 3, Bank? With your money, if you could buy that bet back right now, would you or wouldn't you?
Well, I can. I can buy it back because when I made the wager, Justin Fields was a 220 underdog, and now he's the favorite. So I can get out of it, but I'm going to ride it out. I mean, I'm the Ohio State homer. I just try to call things the way I see them. I can't believe anybody would trade up and give up 3 number ones to get Mac Jones. It's just inconceivable to me. The Niners were at 12. I mean, the guy he might have fell to him at 12. And if he didn't, you could have kind of played the draft. And then, as it got down 7, 8, maybe give up 1 pick if you want him that bad to move up. I never, 2 first-round picks should be for, Aaron Rodgers or something like that. I mean, it's inconceivable to me you would give up 2 first-round picks for Mac Jones. So we'll see. I'm riding that bet out. I'm keeping it.
What about you, Nevada? You riding with it?
I'm right with it, but I am less confident. I'm less confident, and I'm less confident just because this story coming out in the way that it has. If you're the Niners, there's really no reason to have this information coming. If you're really, really, really locked in on that, I agree with everything Bank says, and every fiber in me believes that Justin should be the third pick, and I'm still riding with that. But I am less confident because of this story, and I don't know why. I don't know why this story makes me less confident, but it does, and it's going to make for a very interesting draft evening, and we've seen situations like this happen before. We've seen guys fall through the draft for a variety of reasons, but this would be one of the first times I've ever heard anything like this. So I can't wait to see the draft personally.
Yeah. With me,
hey Kirk, there's no way, even if this happens, there's no way it trumps the Laramie Tunsil draft. We're never going to see a better one than that ever again.
Yeah, because he was unbelievably good, and he fell to the Browns, and they traded out of the spot, and I was like, "Oh my god!" I mean, that kid was the best offensive tackle prospect I've ever seen, and he proved it 3 and out, and he should have been the number 1 pick in the draft and highest paid tackle in the league until Trent Williams just took it. But with Lombardi being that bold, I mean, you got to think someone told him something, and I mean, 'cause that's like when I said Urban Meyer wasn't going to Texas. Like I wasn't that bold because I just had a hunch. It was because someone told me something that was real close to it and said, yeah, because he's got a reputation and you're not always going to be right. And sometimes people will lie to you, but if you're that bold, man, you better be really, really sure about it. So we'll move on down in hopefully late round 1, maybe early round 2. Wyatt Davis. Bank, what are you hearing on Wyatt? Just in terms of what, scouts are saying, he was injured last year, didn't play his best. What are you hearing about Wyatt?
Yeah, my guy felt that he didn't have as good a year in 2020 as he did in 2019, but he still felt that everyone knows who Wyatt Davis is. He's not the most athletic guy in the world. He's a mauler, beat people up. So he didn't think he would get dinged that bad for kind of not having as good a year as people thought he would have. And then there were nagging injury concerns. So he kind of thought Wyatt is Wyatt. He didn't think he would go in the first, but he didn't think he'd go too far into the second. He thought he was kind of a 35 to 40 range draft pick. And again, my guy only evaluates the draft in comparison to his team, his needs, and their scheme. So he could be dead wrong.
What about you, Nevada?
Well, to me, a big tell on Wyatt is he's not going to the draft. Doesn't plan on going to the draft, which I had heard that piece of information and found that, kind of filed that away. Because I think the only reason that Wyatt Davis wouldn't go to the draft is because he's not going in the first round and he knows it. So I think it's probably I think he's probably a second round pick. I think anybody who picks him in the second round is getting a hell of a player. From a selfish standpoint, I hope his name's called by the Packers or the Browns, because those are my 2 favorite teams. And so I would have bet anything at the beginning of the year that he would have been a first round pick, but it's tough. And as Bank said, he didn't have a great year. Did not have a great year. Lots of reasons for it, but I think he's a second round pick, and I think he knows it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's sad because I feel like if he would have sat out like Jamar Chase and like Micah Parsons, he'd have been a first round pick. I mean, if he just stayed and put it in bubble wrap and stayed healthy and worked out and drank smoothies, he'd have been a first round pick. But he came back for his team, which I appreciate and everybody loves. But that's the hard part, is like Jamar Chase can be a top 5 pick. Micah Parsons might be the first defensive player picked, and they didn't play at all. They basically bailed on their team, went to Arizona, worked out. Easy to do, work out 2 hours a day and then chill the rest of the day. So I don't know. I feel for Wyatt, but I think he's going to have a great career, and I think he's outstanding. So I'm going to move on to one of Nevada's favorite players, Josh Myers. Nevada, what are you hearing about Josh? Where would you like him to land? I know we're going to answer that, where that answer is going to be. And what do you think of Josh's draft prospects?
Well, I think Josh is a perfect Packer for selfish reasons, obviously, based upon Corey Linsley's success in Green Bay. And, I think he's probably going to go a little further down the draft than people think. I got him like in the 5th round, maybe it's probably the 6th round, maybe the 7th round. But again, this is where you're going to get value, and this is where whoever drafts a guy like that is going to. Those are the smart teams. The smart teams take guys like that in those rounds. You know why? Because they can play. And, whoever drafts them, I think that instantly is going to up their draft grade for me. I think it's going to be later. I've always thought that once guys flip down that far, that they're better off for them being undrafted free agents, because then they can pick their team. But I think he's going to go somewhere there, and I think he's going to play early. I think he's going to play early and often in his NFL career, and I think he's going to be a guy that outperforms his draft stock, which is not terribly high right now, but that's where I got him slated.
Bank.
Yeah, my guy was really interesting because he really likes Josh, and he also admitted that Josh didn't have the year everybody thought he would have as well. Didn't think he was as good as he was the year before. And what he said is, he said, 3rd day guy. He said, and if he's there in the 5th, he said, we could possibly take him depending on how the draft fell earlier and who's on the board at that point. And he felt that Josh would be a guard, and I can't name the team, but he felt in this team's system, Josh would be a guard for them and not a center. Because for what they asked their centers to do, they like the 6'1", 6'2" center. And they like Josh a lot, and they thought, I can't say who he is. I wish I could. And I'm going to be watching to see if their team takes him. But he thought he would be a 3rd day guy, but he thought he would be early 3rd day on their board.
Yeah, and he's another kid that hurt himself by coming back. I mean, he's the guy that played he had to inject his leg every game, was numb, didn't play well. He was basically playing on one foot. So his mobility was hurt, his lower body strength was hurt, wasn't as good in pass protection, and that's hard. I mean, part of you wants to go out there for your team and be that leader and that warrior, and then there's part of you that's like, man, this film I'm putting out is really bad because I'm sucking it up for the team, and that's kind of one of those teeter-totters that you got to deal with when you're a Buckeye. And I feel for him, but I think he's going to be a great player, and he's going to last a long time. Like, 'cause he's a ox in the weight room, man. He did that 150-pound one-handed snatch in high school. I mean, centers like that don't get pushed around very much. Guys that have that not natural, but they work at their strength. They have strong lower bodies. They're hard to bull rush and to keep the pocket good and firm for good quarterbacks. So Corey Linsley was like that. Corey Linsley was an ox coming out, and he was strong as hell. And he's had a tremendous career. He's the highest paid center in the NFL, and was a 5th round pick. It was stunning. Because I mean, we have the Browns and Bengals 2 hours away each way, and they didn't even look at him ever, and they didn't draft Norwell either. So it was pretty crazy. I'm not gonna lie. So we'll move on to who do we want to do? We want to flip over to defense? Or we want to do Shaun Wade? Let's go Shaun Wade. Bank. Shaun Wade, probably the most polarizing guy on the entire team last year. Did not play well, for whatever reason. What are you hearing on Shaun Wade?
Yeah. If you read things, they're all over the board. But for the team that I spoke to, my guy, he didn't like him last year. And his defensive staff did like him last year. So they had him, they thought he was coming out last year, and they had him fairly high on their board. And then after he played this year, the defensive staff on this team kind of went to the scout and said, you were right, we were wrong, he can't play. Now, my guy thinks he will get drafted 2nd, 3rd. And that's why he made the statement to me that he won't be on our team. Not because they wouldn't want him, but they would look at him as a 5th round guy, probably, and they think he's going to go 2 or 3. So he won't fall to them, and they know it, and they're fine. They wouldn't reach for Shaun Wade. So that was just one guy's opinion, obviously.
Yeah. What about you, Nevada?
Well, I'm going to bet that he goes by the end of the 2nd round, and I'm sticking with that. I think Ohio State cornerbacks, if you look at traditionally in the draft, they've been overvalued by NFL teams and drafted higher than we ever thought. We can go through the list, and there's countless examples of that. And so I just, and also then you look at the success of Ohio State cornerbacks in the league, and they've been tremendously successful as well. So I think I think Wade represents value to somebody. And if you're in the late second round, you're talking about a guy that was a borderline first round pick at the end of last year. And I think at the end of the second, in the middle of the second, somebody's going to snatch him. So that's where I got it. And I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's not a number one corner, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being a number two or number three or being a safety. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's who he is in the NFL. And I think he's going to play a long time and make a lot of money.
Yeah, I think as much as anybody other than Justin Fields, he needs to go to the right program. He needs to be coached hard. He needs to be taught to not look at social media, not have your confidence get crushed by people saying that you suck. And I just honestly, I don't know. I'm sure he worked, but I don't think he worked as hard going into the season. I thought he was going to kind of be preordained to be a first round pick. And then he shows up in the season and people were actually picking on him. There's a story about Trevor Lawrence saying, "Hey, what's wrong with your boy Wade?" and just whizzing balls right at him and not even being scared at all. When we played him, now we beat the mess out of him, but they weren't scared of him. They were throwing it right at him. And they didn't know what was wrong with him. And there was some banter between some of the defensive guys and the Trevor Lawrence. And it was really strange that they actually picked on a guy that was projected to be top 10. So I think you're right. Second, third, latest fourth. The thing that saved him is he ran well. He ran 4.4, which is good. He didn't go out there and pop like a 4.6. So that kind of saved him.
And Kirk, another point on that was much like you mentioned about Josh Myers. You're talking about a guy that played with turf toe the whole year. And anybody who's had turf toe knows how debilitating that is. And, Wade just sucked it up because we really didn't have any alternative. If he doesn't play, and we were in deep trouble as it was, but if he didn't play, we were in deep, deep trouble. Because I think Bill Greene was next on the depth chart to throw out the cornerback. And so I admire what he did, and he didn't look right, but I think there was a medical reason. And when he popped a 4.43 at the thing, I think showed that what he can do when he's healthy.
And I think Bank would have been great at corner because he could put his golf spikes on and just run out there and press man guys. You could do that, couldn't you, Bank?
Hey, well, the one thing that the scout told me that made a lot of sense to me, because after the Alabama game, and fans are mad, and I get it, the team just got the dog beat off them, but people were saying how they thought Sean Wayne dogged it during that game, and I defended him that there's no way that kid's going to dog it. And what the scout told me is he looked like a guy that was beat down mentally to him. Wasn't that he wasn't trying, wasn't that he didn't care, but he was so bad against Clemson and so bad against Alabama. And he just said, look, in our league, you got to have no memory, no conscience. You have to have supreme confidence that even though you just got beat 17 straight times, you're going to get a pick on the next play. And he felt Sean was kind of beat down mentally. And he didn't mention social media stuff that you did, but he just felt that the kid was defeated mentally. And he wasn't dogging. Not that he wasn't trying, just got beat down. And that's a position where you can get beat down.
Oh, yeah. In that league, if you're out on the edge, if you're playing tackle or playing corner, you can get, if you don't want one bad play to turn into two, and then it's like compounding interest, or it turns into 10 bad plays because mentally you're beat. You see that all the time with guys. And cornerback, as Nevada and I've talked about, it's the hardest position in sports to play, in my opinion, because you can't touch the guy. These guys are freak athletes. The quarterbacks have never been better. The offenses have never been the rules have never been more slanted toward the offense. So it's really, really hard to play corner now. I'm just saying. So, when I see these teams giving up a lot of points, I'm like, well, yeah, because it's impossible to stop these guys. If you touch them, it's illegal touching. You can't rough them up like you could back in the day. So I think that seals it up on Sean. And that's another guy that if he would have sat out, he'd have been a top 15 pick. If he'd have sat and drank daiquiris and chilled. And that's the sad part about it is these kids want to come back and play and win the title, and they all hurt themselves, which it stinks. But that's why I tell these guys, man, if you can go get paid. And speaking of getting paid, Tommy Togiai, who kind of surprisingly came out, but kind of not. Bank, what are you hearing on Tommy Togiai from your guy?
He likes him a lot, but he kind of thought he might be a guy that might be overdrafted before they would see him. They saw him as a 4 or 5 round guy, and he would not be surprised if somebody pops him in the 3rd. he liked Togai a lot. He felt he was a grinder, a mauler. And the one thing I did want to mention, and I probably mentioned it maybe on our last podcast, was that, I mean, I talked to this guy probably about 20 guys in the Ohio State program, draft eligible to not draft eligible. And I mean, he mentioned high character kid so many times, it was almost like a broken record. And he loved Tommy Togai. Like, he's the guy you want on your team. If he's healthy, he's going to play 10 years, you know, consistent, solid, not up and down. You know what you're getting with him. And he liked him a lot.
What about you, Nevada?
Yeah, I mean, I've been a big, Tommy fan. He's strong. He's got all the things you want. I happen to think he's going to fall a little bit further than we might think. I think he's a fourth, fifth round guy. And you hope that guys like that do well in the NFL. I think he's got some things going against him, and hopefully he can kind of play through that and be a productive NFL player. Because like I said, I loved him in college. I loved his productivity. I thought he was tremendous. And I thought he was just a tremendous loss in the national championship game against Bama. Not that anything would have, changed the outcome, but he would have helped. I mean, he would have helped. He consistently got that push up front and really, it really was a stabilizing force for that OSU defense all year long. And his loss was profound when he couldn't play. So it'll be interesting to I'll be rooting for Tommy, but I'm not expecting his name to be called to like the fourth or fifth round for sure.
He's probably a third day guy. Yeah, in the national championship game, Haskell had to play nose guard. He hadn't played that all year. Because Strawn's a better three technique and he didn't know nose. So we had to take our three technique, who was really good last year, and put him at nose. And people that don't know, that's a big difference. Like a nose, you're playing over the center, you're holding guys up, you're not really a pass rusher. The three technique is like Warren Sapp. That's the guy that has to get after the quarterback. And Haskell's a light dude and he couldn't, hold up in there. So we got steamrolled. And he wasn't playing in a position that he really knew that well. He was trying to take one for the team because Strawn had to play three that game, and we're rotating guys in. And sometimes it's amazing when you lose one guy and you watch the dominoes fall and see who has to go where. It's more profound than just losing one guy. You have to have a guy who's really good at one spot, play a spot that he's not used to playing, that he's not really built for. And it can be profound, but I think Tommy's going to be a very solid NFL guy. He'll last for a long time in the league. He's tough. He's smart. Surprisingly had a good year rushing the passer, had 3 sacks in the game. But that's something that anything you get out of a nose guard in terms of pass rush is a bonus. Like, you're not counting on that. And if you get it, it's great. It's like a defenseman scoring goals in the NHL. Like, they're not really counting on them scoring 25 goals, but if they do, it's amazing. On to our linebackers. Like, this is going to be an interesting one because, I thought they were okay last year. I don't think they were great, but we've got some guys that tested great. I mean, Bank, I'm going to start with Baron Browning. What are you hearing about Baron Browning? He tested like a freak, but what's your guy saying about him?
Well, he just said the production never matched the potential. And, he thought for them, they're more production-based team, but he thought somebody would fall in love with the measurables and maybe jump in on him, late second, third, maybe, he liked Pete Warner a lot better. And he felt that they would have Browning lower than what the industry would have him, but they felt their team would have Warner higher than what the rest of the NFL would have. So he said, Browning's probably not going to end up on our team. Warner, there's a great chance does end up on our team. And we're hoping, we get him in the right spot. So that's kind of the way he looked at those two. He felt their team is more of a production over potential, but he admitted that Browning has more measurables than what Pete would have.
Nevada, what about you? And now you might as well throw them both together with Pete and Baron. What are you hearing about the two differentiation in opinions, and what have you heard so far?
Yeah, no, I think Baron's a fourth, fifth round guy, and it's just not productive enough, as Banks said, just not productive enough. And the measurables are really good, but they're not super freak. You're not talking like Mamula or something like that. You're talking about a guy who's always been on the edge athletically, but just never been able to make it, show up on the field in in a distinctive way. So I think those guys generally go in the 4th or 5th round of the NFL draft. And Werner's a guy that I think there's a lot of value there. I think some team's going to fall in love with him, but I think that's a 3rd round pick. And I think that's a good spot for Pete. I think Pete's a guy that could play some interesting positions at the next level. I've heard a number of different teams talk about some different spots for him, and maybe even moving him back to safety. So it's I think he's a guy that's versatile. He can play some different positions for an NFL team. He certainly can play your special teams. And I think those guys get drafted and they hang around for a long time.
Yeah, I think Pete's a great player. I think he's going to make a team. He might go in the 2nd round, probably 3rd, but I think he's a tremendous player. So we're going to save Nevadabuck's favorite player from last summer and all of our camp nuggets that we had where we kept pimping Trey Sermon. Nevadabuck, what are you hearing about your boy? Hopefully a team in the NFL gives him the ball before the playoffs start, but tell me a little bit about your boy Trey Sermon.
Yeah, Trey's the guy that he's not a number 1 running back in the NFL. You're always looking at who's the comparisons, and he's a Jamal Williams or something like along those lines, and he's a guy that could be a number 2 running back and be productive and be there, but he doesn't have great breakaway speed, but he does have tremendous vision. He's got tremendous vision, and he can find the hole. He's not afraid of contact. He's while he's sturdy, but on the other hand, he's had 3 pretty significant injuries, and the NFL is an injury league, and you're talking about a guy that broke his back in high school, blew out his knee in college, and then dislocated his collarbone in the national championship game. So, for that reason alone, I could see him going 6th round, 7th round, undrafted free agent. But he's a guy that might surprise you, and if he gets in the right spot, he's able to stay healthy. He's a guy that could stay in the league for a long time. Like, not as a number 1 running back, but as a guy that's productive, another guy that can play special teams. Great teammate, and we'll always remember him as the owner of the greatest game that I've ever seen a running back have at Ohio State, and certainly statistically it was the greatest. And it was a game that mattered. It wasn't some mid-season game against Akron or something like that. This was a game with all the marbles, and he did it. So also the greatest meme of all time, and he's one of my favorites. He was last year, and he will be going forward for sure. I'll be rooting for him.
What about you, Bank?
Yeah, I mean, that was almost exactly what I wrote in my report, almost word for word. So I think there's probably a lot of agreement on just who Trey Sermon is. I mean, my guy felt the same way, never going to be a number 1. And it's a league that doesn't really value running backs to begin with. And then if you're not a number 1 and you're a 2 guy at best, maybe a 3, he thought he would get drafted, though. He thought he would be a 3rd day pick and somebody will take it. And he thought he could, last in the league a while, as a solid, dependable backup. So I thought, my guy described it just exactly the way Nevada did.
Yeah, I mean, to me, he reminds me of like an Arian Foster type, a guy that didn't get drafted, but he got in the right situation with the Texans running, Shanahan's tight zone, wide zone offense. And, he really made hay with it. I mean, nobody thought Arian Foster come out was going to be a number 1 back, but, he had a little run there, but he also had a spat of injuries. I mean, people that followed his career know that he got hurt almost every year, pulled a hamstring, knees, soft tissue stuff. And that's the thing I worry about with trades, because people don't realize how long the NFL season is, but with 4 preseason games, 17 weeks where you get 16 games, I mean, playing 20 games before the playoffs even start is long. Even if the starters only play a little bit in like the 4th preseason game, it's like you can't believe how many games you're playing compared to like a college season, which is 12, and then maybe 3 playoff games at most. You're at 15. You're playing 20 every year. So when you're a running back who's had a lot of nagging injuries, like that concerns me. But I think he's a bull. I think a lot of the injuries are from him running hard. Obviously the thing against Alabama was kind of a fluky thing, but I love how he runs. I love his style. And I hope he just goes to the right team with the right system for him, because I think he could really shine in the right system. So got a couple of just off the wall questions for you guys. So I'm going to set the number at 1, over under 1.5. Over under 1.5 players from Ohio State drafted by Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm going to start with you, Nevada. And bonus points if you name who.
Wow. I'm gonna go with under. I'm gonna go with under. Yeah, I'm gonna go with under, and that'll be interesting to watch. That'll be another little subtext there, and it'll be very interesting to watch. But I'm gonna go with under, and if he picks one, it'll be Pete Werner.
That's a perfect pick. What about you, Bank?
Yeah, I don't know. You know Urban better than any of us, but he seems like such a loyalty guy, like almost loyal to a fault. That I could, like we've talked about guys that fall to that third day, like Togiai, or maybe Browning falls, or maybe Sermon falls. I mean, I could see him pulling the trigger, and maybe Sean Wade slips a long way, and Urban knows him better than anyone. So I'm going to say over. I'm going to be watching that. I mean, I have no idea, but I just think the guy is such a loyalty guy, and he knows these people. You know what I mean? Where so much is unknown, and Urban complained a lot about the free agency, how he never got the chance to get to know these people. The free agency was signing. Well, he knows these guys, so I'm going to take a shot and say over. And I think he goes with who he knows.
And I'll tell you what, I'm going to go over too. And I wouldn't bet money on it, but just for fun, I'm going to say over with you. Because if there is one guy on earth that if I took Sean Wade, I want to coach him, it's Chris Ash. One guy on earth, because he is excellent. So if you got that raw material there and he ran good, and you can get Chris Ash and Charlie Strong around him and get him coached up and loved up and get his technique tuned up. I mean, you can have a steal, but you got to have a coach that you trust and and you and I know Chris Ash is excellent in the back end. I mean, we've seen it in 14, how good he was, get his techniques tuned up. And there's just something about that. And honestly, with Nevada, like the Pete Werner thing was something where I was just, like he called him a first round pick early in the season. And, if he's sitting there in the third round, and Urban get a culture guy, a tough guy that he recruited and he really likes, like, it just makes sense to me because you're going to have him on a cheap contract and he's already got your culture stuff going. So Urban's real big on the culture stuff. So,
right. And Kirk, what about the fact that you're taking over a team filled with losers, used to losing is their way of life. So you bring in guys that have done nothing but win. And I think Urban's going to look at that, not just the Ohio State guys, but I think he's going to look at Bama guys, Clemson guys that have had a lot of success, to turn around a place that's used to losing the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see who takes the middle of the draft.
Kirk, I have a slightly different take. I think Urban's going to be really, and I think he's going to be really gun shy about appearing to like being an Ohio State fanboy and taking Ohio State players. So he's going to have to be damn sure before he drafts them. And I think it is an early tell on that. You look at with free agency, you know what I'm saying? It's not like he went hog wild on Ohio State guys in free agency. And I think it's going to carry through the draft. I think an Ohio State guy's going to have to be there, and it's going to have to be real value before he picks them, just because Meyer's worried about being seen as just like this being a continuation of his time as a college coach. I think he wants to establish himself as a clear NFL guy. And so I think he'll shy away from the Ohio State players.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't land Curtis Samuel. The only guy he got was Banks' boy, big public sub, Carlos Hyde. He's got 2 subs walking out right now, just like he did when he was at Naples. And Banks had doing about 275. He's playing fullback, big pub sub. The Browns are a little later, but the Bengals pick is a real hot topic. I know you guys have your sources, your opinions. Who do you think the Bengals go with? Because the draft kind of starts at 3 with that pick, but that Bengals pick is a premium pick, man. You got 2-3 superstars sitting there. Bank, who do you think the Bengals end up with?
Joey Burrow wants Jamar Chase.
That's what I've been saying that.
Done.
I've been saying that.
Done.
What about you, Nevada?
Joey Burrow wants Jamar Chase. Next.
How could you not? I mean, my God, is he good? What about you, Nevada?
I'd like Kyle Pitts at that pick. I like Pitts just because I think he can do some things that that you can't really see traditionally out of the tight end position. And you look at the great teams that they've been able to commit, to get the mismatches at the tight end spot. And you've seen that with New England with Gronkowski throughout the years, and with the Chiefs and with the 49ers. And I think that would be a really kind of an inspired pick for the Bengals to go that way, because I think Pitts is a real special player.
See, I'm with Bank as much as I like Panay Sewell. I mean, they drafted Jonah Williams as a left tackle in the first round high a couple years ago. They signed Riley Reif as a right tackle who can hang in there for a year. But to get Jerry Rice to Joe Montana, to get Jamar Chase, who ran a sub 4.4, ran like a 4.36, and the most productive college football season ever for a receiver. Like, I just don't know how you pass on that guy. And the chemistry with Burrow, it's already there. I mean, you got your number one for 10 years. I think he's, other than Lawrence, he's the best player in the draft to me. I mean, I don't.
You look at what Justin Jefferson did as a rookie, and I think Jamar Chase is a much better player than Justin Jefferson.
Exactly. I mean, it's I don't know. Like, I will be stunned if they pass, because I mean, getting those two together, you don't talk about excitement and fireworks, man. Like, getting those two back together, you can go trade for a guard, or I mean, guards that are like 30 years old, you can get for a 7th round pick in for nothing. I mean, there's been a lot of guys that got traded, get cut. There's gonna be a lot of trades on draft day when veterans get traded for late round picks and whatever. So I don't know. I would rather trade for a proven guard that started in the league and go with Jonah Williams at left tackle, Riley Reif at right tackle, then draft Soul. And then it's like you have like 2 left tackles and a right tackle. And it's like, what do you do? Jonah Williams, who you drafted like 5th overall, is going to go to left guard now. So you're going to have a 5 and a 5 and $100 million for the cap on two guys. They're going to have to re-up. I mean, to me, Chase is the guy to me. Who do you think is the biggest sleeper in the draft, Nevada? Is there a guy that you've watched on the West Coast? Is there a guy that you saw, when Ohio State played him, or a college football playoff, and you're like, God, that guy's unbelievable?
Yeah, I mean, I like Oweh, the guy, the defensive end from Penn State. I've always, I mean, that they reported that he ran some ridiculous number in the at the either the Penn State Pro Day or whatever the heck it was, the private workout. I don't even want to quote the numbers. I don't want to be wrong, but it was something like 4.39 or something like that. And I don't know why, but I thought he was a terror when we played against them. And I thought he was one of the best players in the Big Ten. And certainly, he was somebody that just jumped out at me every time that I watched him play. And I think he's going to be a great player. He's a physical specimen. And if he can really, really run that fast, I think he's a guy that's going to go later in the first round, but is certainly going to have top of the first round type of ability.
How about you, Bank?
Yeah, I like Oweh a lot too, and I kind of thought like Oweh and Kwity Paye, I thought were both really good players, and so I can't say Oweh now. So I'm going to go Kwity Paye. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he's got a lot of juice to him. I think he was in a jacked up system on a jacked up team that underperformed, but I think this guy's got a lot of stuff to him. And I think, I looked at him and I thought, man, if he would have been at Ohio State with Larry Johnson, how good would he be today? So, Oweh and Kwity Paye are both edge guys, get to the quarterback. And so I'll go with Kwity Paye.
I remember watching the film leading up to the championship, and Landon Dickerson, the center from Bama, holy cow, is he good. I mean, he's not Quentin Nelson at center, but he's pretty close. He's a big, tough dude. Towards ACL, still dressed for the game, got in for the ceremonial stat, but I just think he's got Pro Bowler and, 5-time Pro Bowler, potential Hall of Fame career. I mean, he's a tough nut, mean. And that, I mean, we watched that line. That line was something else. I mean, the left guard was 360 and Leatherwood is the outline winner at left tackle, but the best guy on the line was the center. He didn't even play against Ohio State. Thank God, because they probably would have scored 100. Because I mean, I don't know what he would have done to our guys, but that's the guy that I love. Who, and we'll end with this. Who do you feel has the biggest likelihood to bust out of the top 20 picks or so? Start with you, Bank.
Well, I'm going first on this one. I'm not letting him steal my pick because
Nah.
I'm all in on Mac Jones. I'm all in on Mac Jones not being very good. And I love the Alabama system. I love their kids, Saban. So it's not an anti-Bama thing. I just don't think he's any good. And if I'm wrong, hey, they ain't getting no virgin there if I'm wrong. So I've been there many times. So, but I wanted to get in first and say Mac Jones will be a huge disappointment.
Fair enough. Nevada.
Well, he kind of stole my guy because Mac Jones got.
I knew you were going.
But Mac Jones, he's the only guy that makes me feel good about my body, man. I look at that guy and I'm like, I don't look so bad. I don't look bad at all. But if Mac Jones is off the board, then I'm going with Trey Lance. I think Trey Lance is going to go high. I think it's going to be another one of those things where let the buyer beware. And I don't think he's going to be very good. I don't think he's going to. I think he might hang around the league a few years if people have so much invested in him that they have to keep him around. But I wasn't impressed that much in college. There's not a lot of tape on the guy. And I think he's a big question mark for somebody to take. But, I think the only thing he's got going for him is he's got a better body than Mac Jones, but everybody's got a better body than Mac Jones. So Trey Lance is my pick.
Now, can you see the Packers trading up to get him?
I hope they do. That'd be amazing.
I'm convinced that
they trade him to take Mac Jones.
The Packers might do that. Yeah, they're so bad. The Packers just don't even get me started on the Packers draft.
Well, they would never trade up to take a risky quarterback. They would never do that.
Jeez,
it's not like
they're so stupid.
Could have had T. Higgins, man. T. Higgins was really good last year. Really good. It's funny because the guy I think is going to bust is Zach Wilson. I mean, he's going to the where quarterbacks go to die, the New York Jets.
Right.
No skill whatsoever. A 1-year starter. Like, I can't believe, he had 1 year this past year against very average competition, like below average. I looked at his schedule. I'm like, they lost to, they had like one loss where it was like I'm like, they're not playing Clemson and Bama and USC. And I mean, I looked at that schedule and I was like, and his numbers were fantastic, but if Justin Fields played against those teams, they'd be even better. So I can't believe that there's just no discussion about Fields going to. Like, that's stunning to me. Like, I get Lawrence's one. He'd be one almost any year, except for maybe Andrew Luck's year or John Elway's year. But Zach Wilson, man, I mean, because I don't think Sam Darnold's terrible. I might be crazy, but I mean, behind that line, I watched a lot of Jets games last year. I had Le'Veon Bell in fantasy. And it was like, you want to talk about a sieve and getting beaten to the backfield. I mean, it was painful to watch the Jets on offense. And, you're going to get some young kid who's a junior from Utah, and you're going to put him in New York City, and it's like, I'm just saying, like, that just seems like a recipe for disaster. And I mean, that line was bad. They took Mekhi Becton, who was good, but he got hurt a bunch. I don't know. I mean, that's the one where I'm just like, I can't believe that there's no discussion between. Because I'd take Fields just because I think he's a better athlete, he's bigger, more durable, because you're going to get hit a lot in the league, man. And, especially when you're playing for the Jets, you're going to get hit a whole bunch. And I think he has bust written all over him. So last thing I'll leave you with, who's the first defensive player drafted in the draft? Because this is one that's kind of tricky. Really?
Patrick Surtain.
Is that your boy?
Yes.
Is that the red velvet cake? Did he meet you at Mama Lucy's?
No, I know the dad real well, but he's a stud. Patrick Surtain.
His dad was a monster.
Oh yeah, Micah Parsons got character concerns all over the place. Patrick Surtain, solid as can be, out of Alabama. Patrick Surtain to the Cowboys. Is what I think will happen.
I got it. What about you, Nevada?
I got J.C. Horn. I think Horn's a better cornerback, and I think he's a tremendous player, tremendous measurables, and you're really a guy that really was a stalwart on defense last year, and really a guy that I think a lot of the pro teams are looking at is in a lot of drafts he might be a top 5 pick, but this is such a quarterback heavy draft that he's going to slip down a little bit hard. But I'm pretty confident he'll be the first name, defensive name taken off the board.
That's two good picks. I mean, I'd probably go Surtain. I mean, Parsons is such a turd that I just can't imagine someone risking a high pick on him. But I've been wrong before. Well, gentlemen, this has been excellent. Bama, do we have to change your name from Gator Green to Bama Bank? I've been meaning to ask you that because you're the biggest Bama fan I've met recently. But you know, you don't have to agree with that. But me and Nevada have been talking about that a little bit. And we lost them, of course. You there, Nevada?
Yeah, well, these are always fun. Yeah, Bill's a front runner. He's like that kid that always rooted for the Super Bowl champion, and that was always his favorite team. And he always got the jacket every year or something like that. So I think he kind of goes. So he'll always be Gator Green to me. But you know, I know that some of the younger people, he might be Bama Green.
He might be Bama Bill, man. That might be his new name, Bama Bill.
I think next year he's going to be Boomer Green. He's going to be Boomer unless all the Oklahoma players are incarcerated. But you know, Banks, he's flexible. He's flexible.
We might have to get him a houndstooth visor to wear to the camps in the summer. You know, the Scoop logo on it.
Bear Bank.
Bear Bank. That's what it is. Bear Bank. Yeah. That's what we're going to call him from now on. So, all right, brother. Dude, I appreciate you. I'm about to jump on the board. Get on the Scoop board, guys. It's on fire. Got the Wiseman coming next week. Tell me a little bit about Nevada before we get out of here. Wiseman chat.
Four Wiseman chat all day next Thursday before the draft. It's going to be epic. Something we haven't done in it might have been 10 years. It's been a really, really long time. Really, really long time. So it's going to be a take over the four Wisemen of the site. And BuckeyeScoop.com is going to be howling that day. So it's if you haven't signed up yet, be sure to do it.
Go time. All right, brother. I'll see you. Get on the boards, everybody. The Scoop is on fire.